In late 2023, an awards event cleverly named the Game Awards took place to celebrate the year in gaming, with previews and trailers of upcoming games, featured celebrities, an award here and there, and according to reports, approximately 30 minutes of the 3-hour show featuring actual developers having a voice. World of Warcraft is one of the longest running games out there, notable for operating at an immense scale while coming into its 20th year in operation. But it was a no-show at the Game Awards. One could say it was snubbed, but actually that's a bit unfair to say. Even as a longtime fan of the franchise, I didn't envision an old game being nominated for categories like Game of the Year, or Best Narrative, Best Multiplayer, or even Best RPG, let alone to win any of them. And 2023 was truly stacked with great games. But I paid particular attention to the Best Ongoing Game category, thinking, oh okay, this counts older games, surely World of Warcraft will at least be nominated. It wasn't. And instead of the 3 modern live service games and the critically acclaimed MMORPG with an expanded free trial which you can play through the entirety of, I'm sure you know the rest, the winner turned out to be Cyberpunk 2077. It's a single-player game with ongoing support and DLC. I was a little bit surprised. I'd rationalized to myself that Cyberpunk was in the middle of its own comeback story. After a really rough launch and severely damaged reputation, its studio has been trying to claw back its lost goodwill, and has been coming back with patches and DLC to make the game meet the original expectations it set many years ago. I can accept that there's only room for one of these kinds of stories in a category like this, I figure, but again, this is me trying to make myself feel better. And so without shame, I want to celebrate World of Warcraft in 2023, because I look at it in a similar way to Cyberpunk. It's like a comeback story. It's a dramatic shift where in games, and especially in MMORPGs, dramatic shifts kind of take a while. 2023 is going to be the bulk of WoW's most recent expansion, Dragonflight. The difference in philosophy and delivery between this year and previous years isn't me uncritically saying that, it was bad and then it was good. It's more like, this is what we had and here's what we have now. It's very different. Now you can decide for yourself what you thought of 2023 and Dragonflight. You might already have, and you're just looking for a different take. But whatever the case, strap in. We entered 2023 with a roadmap in our hands, offering an overview of the year's upcoming milestones. Before this, the notion of a year-long roadmap was absolutely unheard of in the WoW universe. The company once had a history of not releasing games until they're ready, but that reputation was savaged over the years. Coming off the likes of Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands, and even before this, many are still recalling the long lulls of Mist Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor, it wasn't surprising to kind of laugh at the notion of a schedule, and, well, many of us remain skeptic. 1 year later, though, it turns out Blizzard walked the walk. The roadmap turned out to be a huge success for the WoW team, as we stayed informed on what's coming, and very importantly, we had an idea of when. And now a new 2024 roadmap revealed itself. A year ago, many fans, including myself, thought, yeah, okay, let's see how this turns out. But now we can be pretty confident of when these next patches are coming, even when the next expansion and its first content patch are likely to launch. It's pretty reassuring for gamers. Now that's something to both celebrate and normalize, where we as fans don't have to suck up that copium to rationalize our expectations of when. The Dragonflight formula is, well, in some ways it's kind of just that, it's a formula. Now that we have both a 2023 and 2024 roadmap, we can deconstruct Dragonflight into its parts. 4 seasons, with 3 covering the main story, and a 4th bonus season to act as a victory lap of the previous raids and a prologue to what's ahead. The 4th season of Shadowlands can be looked back on like a test case to see how well we as players would respond to a shorter 4th season to kind of cut through what would normally be a many months long lull of content between the last raid and the next expansion. If the likes of Mist Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, and Battle for Azeroth followed a similar format, what would the player response have been? Since moving to the season format, starting with Battle for Azeroth, Dragonflight moved from a single mid-season patch to 2 mid-season patches. I'm willing to wager that this approach does a lot not just for development, but for what sorts of content is put into players' hands at the most ideal time. More patches means more opportunities for features and activities to release within the season as opposed to waiting for the next season, and more time to make sure that they're ready. Imagine if the features from patch 10.15 and 10.17 had to be crammed into one patch in the middle of the season. It would be doable, but there would be challenges, because on the one hand, features like the Evoker specialization and the Dawn of the Infinite Dungeon would have to wait that much longer until it got into players' hands. On the other features would need to be ready for launch many weeks sooner, or perhaps just be put off until a future patch. And all of this would need to be decided and worked on at about the same time. Now, I know that's a little bit oversimplified, but I hope you get my point. As for the player experience, we can point to any number of patches in recent expansions where the pacing of activities felt odd. I'm thinking keywords like time-gated, contrived, arbitrary. I'm speaking anecdotally here, but I remember patch 7.2, playing through short quests that were stretched over 3 months with one little quest per week before the Tomb of Sargeras raid actually opened. And then there was the 7-week wait for the Battle of Dazar lore after Season 2 of Battle for Azeroth started. And as for Shadowlands, it was like all of it, but I'll point out Season 2, Chains of Domination, with the very long wait to upgrade outdoor gear, and rep grinds and other basic activities that were intertwined with renown levels, which were going crazy slow. It feels odd that it took so long to get an organized system like what we have now. It makes so much sense, and one has to wonder why it took so long. Now, I'm not going to make up excuses, but I'm going to point out the kind of obvious. These kinds of development pivots take time. A big team without a plan, it means messy execution. A good plan but not a big enough team to execute on it is just unfinished work. And I'm not trying to get cocky here, like not everyone was a fan of every feature that came alongside Dragonflight. No comeback story is a clean win, but WoW's comeback in 2023 included some big impactful features, and let's talk about them. The trading post dropped early in the year, changing the conversation in how World of Warcraft offered rewards. We still have the likes of rare mounts and gladiator appearances and other kinds of rewards earned in-game from every facet of gameplay. The trading post really took the teeth out from the Endgame shop though, which still offers a small number of exclusive appearances, but these days, items seen on the shop eventually get added to the trading post rotation as well. Old items from the in-game shop, the trading card game, and Recruiter Friend also added to the trading post. And one isn't forced to log in each day or week, but just once a month to obtain the currency needed to purchase what's available or to stockpile it. There's an amazing amount of freedom that contrasts the likes of a battle pass or daily logins or other features in live service games. Piggybacking on that are the likes of Twitch and Prime Gaming rewards. Drops and support a streamer events weren't a thing in WoW until just before the launch of Dragonflight, and now it's kind of expected. And from my perspective, it's very creator friendly. Thank you. Dragonriding forever changed not just the shape of the world in World of Warcraft, but the philosophy of world building and the way that we experience it. I've been doing commentary videos for like 7 years now, and I've said time and time again that the WoW team is scared of flying. That's why it was tucked away behind some Pathfinder achievement months and months into an expansion. And since Mist of Pandaria, flying didn't feel like it was a part of a game, it was more like just an escape from it. Dragonriding is most definitely part of the game world now, with a massive scale and features like dragon racing that make this more than simply a method of travel. It's hinted at that during the upcoming saga, areas that haven't been touched in years like Quel'Thalas might get a full redo with respect to the scale and size of Dragonflight, so it's going to be exciting to see what comes in the next few years. With the exception of professions and a bit of story access, Dragonflight throws out the usual WoW playbook of locking players into a daily routine for player power, unless of course the player chooses it. The season cap approach is more or less normalized across multiple game systems. If you're a very regular player, certain rewards are limited to a cap that grows each week or so, from conquest to crafting sparks to upgrade materials and catalyst charges and more. But if one is late, or if they're rolling an alt, for the most part they can continuously farm until they've caught up with the mains. This has been an evolving philosophy. It started with Conquest, Shadowlands introduced Renown, which had a season cap, and Dragonflight just lifted that cap with a new approach to rewards that didn't pressure or force players into it for power. The profession changes in Dragonflight are extensive, and in my opinion, people who want to really dive into the idea that professions are endgame came away with a challenging but maybe satisfying experience. Now obviously, your mileage may vary. Imagine if the raid and dungeon finder was just like gone, and now you had to use the pre-made group tool. Some folks would be fine, others definitely wouldn't. That's kind of how I describe the drastic change that professions went through, followed by players' reactions. Now, I've read and I've listened to a lot of the feedback, and I'm convinced that with some tweaks to avoid making mistakes with specializations and limited region-wide crafting, we'll be in a much better place with professions in the near future. Couple that with the upcoming account shared bank, and I'm plenty excited for what's next. It's often said in World of Warcraft discourse that one of its main characters is the world itself. I've mentioned how Dragonflight changed the actual world, but not how much emphasis was put into outdoor activities, while at the same time not trying to force anyone to participate because of an extra bonus to player power. Instead, we got one system, one experiment after another, a little something different each time to gauge our interest with, of course, mixed results. Personally, the Great Hunts with the Maruk Centaur were my favorite, and I guess the data agree, seeing as how a variant of the Great Hunt kept popping back up throughout Dragonflight, until the Super Balloon, which was when the WoW team settled for a good balance between ease of participation and constant reward loops between each event. And it's great that when new seasons arrive, the drops from the past scale up, ensuring some level of participation and relevance at every point of the expansion. On the other side of things, Endgame hasn't been this accessible since Warlords. It wasn't so long ago when we were grinding up Torghast or farming Mauve Souls to rubber band our next chance at a legendary, or waiting in queue so we can try completing a PvP island expedition, and then repeating all this again and again on each of our alts. This is another one of those night and day changes where talents took their throne back as the way that we customized our character's playstyle. For years, WoW players enjoyed, or maybe endured, the journey to max level, followed by the journey to get your character ready for endgame by progressing through one system after another. Say what you want about alt unfriendliness, and there are some good points, but no matter what kind of big three content you do these days, all you need to do is push in that direction, and guess what? You're already in endgame. The new upgrade system, now in its second iteration, continues the experiment of what happens when it's just easier to get higher level gear. For some, gearing is always fast. For others, who get drops less frequently, an upgrade to their gear each week is just around the corner, giving this gear extended life. I think this works out much better than getting artifact power and adding a few item levels to our weapon or our Heart of Azeroth. Between this, and crafting and weekly quests and the revival catalyst, getting the best gear still takes a great effort, but getting started feels really good. In more recent expansions, critical WoW opinions revolved around like a certain low point that sucked the excitement and fun, and it wouldn't be resolved until much later in the expansion. I'm talking about things like flying, the RNG from Legion legendaries, and corruption. I'm talking about account-wide essence requirements, and renown grinding, and covenant switching, problems with solutions that came kind of too late. I think the closest thing to that in Dragonflight was maybe not being able to trade crests or flight stones across the account. Now, that critique is a thing, I get it, we still have one more season to go, but even if trading crests did become a thing, I think to myself that's only slightly exciting. It's hardly the sigh of relief that we've had in previous expansions, so I wonder to myself if Dragonflight is going to feel less exciting overall because towards the end there wasn't a really low point for the WoW team to make up for. With 2023 wrapping up, We got what we got, and looking back to where we were to where we are, it's hard to not call this year a comeback story. Now, as for where we're going, the jury's still out, but I'm not looking at 2024 thinking, well, it can't be any worse than last year. Nowadays, I have expectations. I'm feeling bright and hopeful. I didn't give myself a chance to even talk about the classic era games in this video, but I'll at least say that it's another talking point that the WoW team isn't just listening, but they're also responding. They're doing their best to aggressively adapt to our changing wants and needs. The blueprint for 24 for both the modern and classic era is now in our hands, and it'll be exciting to see how it fills out in the coming months. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year.